Today on Locked On Rockies, we had so much fun with Evan Lang and Skyler Timmins. We brought them back to talk moves the Rockies need to make right away, a look at the Arizona Fall League, talking TV talk, and what the first move should be for the Colorado Rockies.
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 20th day of October in the year 2023. I'm your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, joined by two of the best in the business yet again, Evan Lang, Skyler Timmins, back in action. They are all over the place when it comes to Rockies media. Where should they? Let's start there. Proper introductions. Let's have you both reintroduce yourselves, telling us where we should go and find all that great Rockies coverage.
I'm Evan Lang from Purple Row and Rocky Mountain Rooftop. Go to www.purplerow.com for our writing. You can find other of our writing on the Fans First Sports Network website, which is fansfirstsports.com or ffsn.app. We do writing for Purple Row, part of SB Nation, and then we do the podcast through the Rocky Mountain Rooftop umbrella, affected by altitude, every Rocky ever, and the occasional other stuff.
When there's time for it. I mean, a million other things that you guys do. And we had you on last week. We were talking ranking the Rockies, and there's still, we'll hopefully have you guys on again when we get to the juicy rankings for the Rockies, because you guys are naming off some players I completely forgot actually played for the team this year right now. And so not too much to dive in there. And I wanted to start today's conversation with being pretty pumped with the Gold Glove announcements. And I've been kind of tampering my expectations with that because I know Gold Glove, that there's kind of all sorts of stuff tied up in it, but it's pretty in a season full of everything we just experienced to have three, and as Skyler pointed out, just barely not four Gold Glove nominees for the Rockies. That has to be encouraging, right? We have to feel really good about this Rockies defense going forward in 2024.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. Like Gold Glove is usually, that one's of the awards more of a popularity contest because the pedigree of a name really carries a guy quite a bit, but not so much this year because notably we see a lot of these rookies, well-deserving players throughout, but especially Rockies players. Ryan McMahon at third base, who's been a finalist for 3 years in a row now, probably still won't get it, but he's still there in the conversation. Ezekiel Tovar in his rookie season, as well as Brenton Doyle. Rookies come in and immediately they're finalists at their position. It's pretty exciting because Rockies' history has been defense, Gold Glove level defense, and to have three guys that are in that conversation, and all three have pretty strong cases to win their position. It's exciting. It's fun to see good defense, especially after some of the terrible defense we've seen in the past couple of years.
Yeah, and the fact that Nolan Jones, the only reason he's not a finalist is because he didn't meet the innings qualification. So Rawlings, for their Gold Glove qualifications, you need 698 innings played at the primary position before the team's 138th game. Had Nolan Jones gotten started a little bit sooner, he probably would have made the cut. He fell basically 30-some innings short.
It's that random inning count and game count. I'm sure that there's some math and some sort of factor, but it is just kind of funny. Yeah, he missed out on 30 innings because he didn't have enough in the 600 range to demonstrate it. But it's not, nothing to knock on Nolan Jones really at all. I'm encouraged by the defense, and I like what even the potential for the defense to get better for the Rockies. But at the end of the day, is defense enough? Can defense make up for lackluster pitching for the Rockies? Is this maybe the philosophy of stack the field with as many elite defenders as we can to back up pitching that is going to be mediocre at most times?
Yeah, it's kind of a twofold thing where you still want good defense behind you. That any pitcher will take really good defense behind them because it makes pitchers better. Now, will it make up for everything with the Rockies pitching? Probably not, because it doesn't matter how good your defense is if you're giving up just smoking line drives, deep fly balls that end up as home runs or extra bases. But for guys to come in and make the routine plays, especially in the outfield for the Rockies, having guys like Brenton Doyle and Nolan Jones, that goes a long way to cutting off. Maybe they can turn an extra base hit into a single. They can track something down in the gap or on the run, rob a home run, all kinds of stuff. They can do things that make your pitching better, but it's not going to fix all their problems. But it goes a long way of helping the team overall. Maybe takes a little less pressure off the pitching, or if they make a mistake, my defense is there to back me up. That sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't completely make up for pitching, but it definitely helps. It definitely helps to have a guy like Nolan Jones or Brenton Doyle roaming around in the outfield who are going to be able to make those plays and save you some runs.
Yeah.
Do you think
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, like, in my own experience, I remember in high school, I was a lot more of a pitch to contact. I could rack up the punch outs, but I was like getting my best year, my junior year. It was a fastball on the outside, ground ball to my second baseman, flips it to first. Got that a ton. My senior year, that's second baseman had graduated. I get some new, and you get the younger infielders, the sophomores and the juniors behind me. Second base wasn't as strong. Like, you lose some of that defense, and that's what my senior year wasn't as good because the defense wasn't as great in what I was pitching towards. And same with the Rockies. When that defense isn't great, your ground ball pitchers they're looking a lot more rough. And so
yeah, that's how Kyle Freeland gets in trouble, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's how I think he's like one of the prime examples of. I call him one of the most unlucky pitchers I've watched. I mean, Kyle Freeland, he doesn't dominate you, but he is able to get that contact. But it's whether it be bloops or the times where the Rockies defense just seems to short circuit seems to be when he's on the mound. But when you have so many ground ball pitchers and you have so much of a pitch to contact philosophy, it seems ingrained in your staff. You got to have that defense, and it is exciting to see. Doyle is pretty much a slam dunk, right? Is he the only one you guys expect to take home the hardware from this award?
What's tough is that he doesn't have the name brand recognition of some of the other candidates. So, like, you have Atlanta's Michael Harris Jr. or what is it, Michael Harris II, that has that name brand recognition that does generally help with these kinds of things. It's one of the reasons why, Nolan Arenado took home 10 straight, especially last year where he was just sort of okay. And it's why, honestly, it's kind of surprising that he wasn't on the list this year, but he really didn't have that good of a defensive season. If you're looking at it purely from a gameplay and statistical point of view, yes, Brenton Doyle is a slam dunk. He had the single best season of any center fielder, not just in the National League, but in Major League Baseball as a whole.
Mm-hmm. And it's part of that thing. What's nice with the voting now is it's part of that sabermetric index thing that has a big portion. And a lot of credit to the coaches and guys that are voting around the league. They can't vote for their own players. So like Bud Black or whoever for the Rockies isn't voting for Brenton Doyle. But it's nice to see that added recognition as a finalist that the other coaches, they know. They get the scouting reports, especially those National League coaches. They learned pretty quickly this season, and for some reason it took them even longer to not run on Brenton Doyle and Nolan Jones. But they learned it, and those guys take that. They recognize, game recognizes game. And it was nice to see that, if nothing else, the rest of the league is taking notice of them. And again, yeah, Doyle's a slam dunk. Tovar and Rymack, they're in those conversations, but not as good as the others. But they're getting recognized, which at the end of the day is really awesome.
It's cool to see Tovar up there with Francisco Lindor and Dansby Swanson. He's certainly not winning that Gold Glove over those two guys because, as you guys mentioned, the recognition plays a huge role and doesn't really get much bigger than those two names right there at that position. But I think it is at the end of the day, they're awards, they're one things, but it's just nice to look and say, like, hey, like, amidst all of this, there was some really great play being done by the Rockies and highlighted by an exceptional performance in center field. If Brenton Doyle doesn't win, I mean, we won't be that disappointed, but it's certainly not because of statistical performance, because it doesn't get much better than what Brenton Doyle was doing. I want to talk about the first move the Rockies should make this offseason, and keep checking in on the Arizona Fall League and see where the Rockies might be at, because how you watch the Rockies is certainly going to be different next year. We'll dive into all of that coming up next here on today's episode of Locked On Rockies. But before we do that, got to tell you about some of the people that make this show possible, and that includes Jase Medical. Modern medical care and treatment are important, but our global supply chains are fragile. Things like pandemics, natural disasters, and foreign travel may cut you off from the treatment you need. Jase Medical is your solution. Just fill out their online form, and one of Jase Medical's board-certified physicians will review it to determine whether medications are safe and appropriate. Then Jase will send your prescriptions to one of their partner pharmacies, where your order will be filled and mailed directly to your home. You can also send your physician a message for answers to treatment-related questions at any time. Everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. That's why Jase Medical offers the Jase case. Save more than $360 by getting antibiotics with Jase Medical, plus an additional $20 off by using the code LOCKEDON at checkout at jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast. We are joined by Purple Row, affected by altitude, every Rockies ever, all sorts of names and content coming your way, keeping you up to date. Skyler Timmins, Evan Lang here on the show. And we were talking about the importance of defense and good defense for the Rockies in the first segment there. Let's move on to moves the Rockies need to make. And Skyler, shout outs to you getting that Patrick Saunders question answered there in the mailbag.
Yeah.
Shout outs to you, my man. I'm curious, if you're in the driver's seat for the Rockies right now, what's the first move? What's the first move you make? Is it somehow convince a pitcher to get here and come here, or is it a trade, or is it just see what happens at the winter meetings?
This is always a loaded question. And one thing that, going back, shouting out that Patrick Saunders mailbag at the Denver Post, and this is something that the thing that you always have to get in line before you start bringing your personnel is who's going to be coaching and helping this personnel. And Patrick pointed out they're probably not going to see Bud Black move on, but there could be other coaching staff moves. And I think the big one is pitching coach, where the Rockies really need to figure out the most effective pitching coach that could get the most of helping figure out Coors Field and helping foster the best pitching out of Rockies pitchers. And we haven't gotten it. It's been a struggle since Steve Foster left. Darryl Scott, he's done his best that he can, but it's just not cutting it. And I look at the Rangers, you look at who they brought in. Mike Maddox came in, and that team did a full 180 from last season, one of the best rotations in baseball this season, and it's powerhouse through the playoffs. Who can the Rockies get to be that guru to come in and help them? Just like Brent Strom for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Rockies need a pitching coach that can just take the bull by the horns and figure this dang thing out of pitching at altitude, because that would be my first move. Who's going to help out on this staff to help our guys?
Can we get Greg Maddox?
Yeah.
The Rangers have Mike Maddox. Why can't we have Greg? No, but I don't want to discredit Darryl Scott because he has a tough job, but it just felt so many times this season. All right, here comes Darryl Scott to talk to his pitcher, next pitch thrown, and it's gone.
Yeah.
And it's very clear that what they're doing is not working.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's that thing of Darryl Scott's been in the organization for super long, working up through the minors as a coordinator. It's again that same thing the Rockies struggle with: loyalty and being insular. We have the same guys that have been with the organization for decades, still trying to figure out the problem we've had for decades and just doing the same thing over and over again. It's maybe bringing another outside pitching influence, somebody who's really analytically minded, can know how to utilize that, and also help guys with the nice fine mechanics and all that stuff. Outside perspective, perhaps.
It's really key, honestly. I mean, it is. It's a key moment where why not go bring in? The Rockies don't have a role for her, but go get Kim Ng from and see what she could do. I mean, she took the Marlins. I mean, who are and got them into a point where they're legit. I mean, they might not be like Braves legit, but they're a team that if they give themselves a chance in the playoffs, the dice are going to fall their way. Sometimes it hasn't happened this year and not in the shortened season, but the other times they made the playoffs, what happened? They won the World Series. You know, so that creativity is so lacking from the Rockies. I just don't see them making those moves. That would be the biggest shift, I think, that you could tell if the Rockies were bringing outside people. But then when they did bring outside people, and correct me if I'm wrong, they had a few new people that left in under a year after hiring them last year, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
In 2021 to 2022, we had someone who was hired for analytics who didn't even make it through the offseason.
And like, you just can't have that. I mean, that, and to continue to sit here and say, man, how do we figure out these problems we've been trying to figure out for 30 years? Look, the same team has been working on it for 30 years, it feels like. And so to crack this code, it is going to require taking a step outside of the organization and bringing in someone new. I just can't really believe that this team is actually going to do that. Do you think this team actually moves on from Daryl Scott this offseason? I mean, it's certainly likely. They moved on from some coaches last year, but I don't know. I'm in believe it when I see it mode here with the Rockies front office.
And the problem is, I also don't think just moving on from Daryl Scott is going to fix anything. I mean, you mentioned Kim Ng. Honestly, the first move that this team needs to make is Dick Monfort publicly going, I'm not going to meddle in baseball operations anymore, and I have hired Kim Ng to be our president of baseball operations. But that's probably not going to happen. So who knows?
What will
that's
it take
what they need. That's what they need.
I mean, 30 years of mediocrity and losing, more realist. I mean, a couple of seasons there, but overall, the Rockies have done more losing than winning. And Dick Monfort gets to lean back on Rocktober, which, hey, you know, I will always love for my life. I was just talking the other day. I will happily watch 2007 Rockies highlights anytime I see them pop up online. But eventually, something's got to give. And if 103 losses ain't it, what is?
And October was 16 years ago.
Yeah, it's going to be 20. I mean, with this team coming to fruition, it's going to be, hey, it's the 20-year anniversary of Rocktober, and they're finally making a run at it, it feels like. But yet, are the Rockies going to be able to put themselves in a situation to handle a critical point in their pitching just for the next 2 years? Because you have to figure out how to start next season, and then you have to bank on health from two key players, mixed with how many other arms you're bringing in. Who you have in charge of your pitching, coaching, and philosophy is critical right now. And I'm my doubts are high. I mean, even with all these trades for arms, can we really believe that the Rockies are going to turn them into serviceable Coors Field arms? And when I say serviceable, I mean, just give me more Kyle Freelands, you know, give me more and a Herman every once in a while, and I'll feel a lot better. But I just don't believe that this team is going to be able to right now handle this really, really tough situation with the pitching.
Yeah, and we talked about this on our most recent episode of Affected by Altitude with our fellow host, our fellow guest, Kenneth Weber. But it's a lot of the Rockies needing, and this would be another move that they need to make, is figure yourself out in-house. They got to right the ship inside first. They got to look within, find that piece and figure out how can we develop and fix our approach to developing pitching. How can we take a Chase Dollander and help him realize his full potential of being an ace, top of the rotation type of guy, instead of, well, we got a bunch of guys that could be 3 or 4 starters in a rotation right now. But how can we help these guys be a legit? Everybody could be a 1 or 2 starter in our rotation. You look at the Tampa Bay Rays, what's strong for them? They just keep pumping out pitchers. A ton of teams do that. And that's what the Rockies got to figure out. That would be, going back to that original question, first move, figure out your pitching in-house. How are you going to develop? And then make this a place that free agents or whatnot would want to come. That they're not scared to come pitch at Coors Field, but it's a place they want to come to, knowing that they can get better.
Yeah, because it really is. It's very clear that the Rockies don't have it figured out. And if the team doesn't have it figured out, why would a big name free agent pitcher want to come here and be the person who has to try and figure it out?
I heard the schools are really nice, so that worked out for Mike Hampton.
But that's even the crazy thing. I've talked about this so many times. I'm sorry. I'm a Mike Hampton apologist. They signed him to an 8-year deal and cut bait super early. They really did not give him a fair chance, especially after he showed flashes of what could work in that first season, especially.
It's a whole, it all just leads into these questions about the team as a whole and how they run their business. And it's just, I'm just really nervous about it, to see how this is where the rotation ended up after the promise of what was promising about those playoff runs was, wow, look at this rotation. Again, I don't need I know the Rockies aren't going to be next in line for the next Kershaws and Verlanders of the world. But again, I just want a solid 1 through 5. Like it felt like when the Rockies were going to the playoffs back in the day where every single time one of those guys stepped up to the up on the rubber, you feel good. But when you got to go and it's like Ty Block, Chase Anderson, Chris Flexen, Jose Arena, I mean, it doesn't bring excitement. And then you guys nail it. You have to change the culture here and the perception here before you can start bringing in these big names that can have immediate impacts. I mean, if the Rockies were in positions to in off seasons where they're just an arm away to be like, hey, let's go get a Jack Flaherty this off season and bring him in, that would be a huge step forward for them. But I just think this team is so far off from that. And that will be one of the biggest changes we'll see. But we'll see how they start handling things in-house, because I don't know. I mean, it was a pretty lackluster 30-year celebration, I think, this year, highlighted by a lot of glaring issues for the Rockies that not sure if they're going to fix them.
What's even worse is that you can now look back at those 2017 and 2018 rotations and see how much luck was involved in those rotations being as good as they were. Just to even look at Herman and look at how before this year, he had almost never missed a start. In every full season he's pitched 29, 33, 28, 13, 32, 31. This was the first season in his entire career where he's missed significant time. And that just tells you how much luck went into those two runs. And it hurts to have to say it, but it really does feel like those two runs were much more of a fluke than they felt like at the time.
Absolutely. I mean, to where the Rockies are at now, I mean, you can't ignore that they did get in, especially it hurts even more with them being a game away from winning the division in one of those situations, and just fully highlights the massive mishandling of the team at the trade deadline and making that into a legit competitor. So we wouldn't be in this situation that we're in right now. But let's shift focus here. Let's talk about Arizona Fall League and a big question surrounding the team as well when it comes to where you're going to be watching the Rockies next year. Let's do that coming up here in segment number 3. But before we do that, those daily fantasy fans out there, you don't want to miss out on Sleeper, especially with the playoffs in full swing. Don't miss out on all the daily fantasy baseball action at sleeper.com. Baseball has never been more exciting than it is now. I mean, the Phillies, they're hitting home runs all the time. So why not take the over on home runs for a variety of Phillies players like Harper, Schwarber? Maybe you're really high on Trey Turner right now. You can choose more or less on stats like home runs, hits, strikeouts, and more for your favorite superstars and get 100 times payout on Sleeper. Get your picks right and you can win big. Use the promo code LOCKEDON and you'll get a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions do apply. That's promo code LOCKEDON at sleeper.com for a $100 match on your first deposit. Sleeper, see Sleeper's terms of use for details. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDON at sleeper.com for a $100 match on your first deposit. We got Evan, Lang, and Skyler Timmins here on the Locked On Rockies podcast, joining us, breaking down all things Rockies. And unfortunately, we had to resort into downer mode for the Rockies in that last one. That's unfortunately the reality of the situation. So let's pep things up a little bit. Rockies seem to be making some noise down there in Arizona. I know you guys have been following that with some of your coverage. What can you tell me from the Arizona Fall League so far?
Ooh, it's been fun. The Rafters got off to kind of a sluggish start. So the Salt River Rafters are the Rockies AFL team, basically, with a bunch of other teams. So like the Detroit Tigers and other teams we play with, basically just mash together our farm systems for a short little season of play down in Arizona. The kind of unsung thing that's been really interesting is Case Williams hasn't really gotten talked about a lot. Case Williams, one of the Rockies pitching prospects. He's made 2 starts with 6 innings. He's only given up 2 hits and he struck out 7. He looks good. And it's really nice to see that, especially when he's going up against like top Tigers pitching prospect Jackson Jobe, for example. That's been really cool. But where the 2 really big names on the rafters right now that are making a show of it are Sterling Thompson and Benny Montgomery. Sterling Thompson, the Rockies' number 6 prospect for MLB Pipeline, actually has like the 4th best OPS in the entire Arizona Fall League at 1.182 with 4 doubles, 2 triples, 7 runs batted in. He's walked 10 times to just 11 strikeouts, and he's got 2 stolen bases. He's looked fantastic. And then you've got Benny Montgomery, who's got 5 stolen bases, has walked 7 times to 13 strikeouts, has an OPS over 1,000 as well, has a home run, a double, and a triple, and 8 RBIs. These are the 2 guys. These are the number 6 and number 8 organizational prospects per MLB Pipeline, and they're both looking the part down in Arizona. They've been a ton of fun to watch.
Man, and those are lines that you want to hear. You know what I'm saying? The walk and strikeout ratio closer together. They're at long 6 innings, low hit performances. Those are the type of stuff to really get excited about. And man, what a cool idea. I'm glad that it exists. It's a really great idea to get people some important playing time, because why not keep the training going throughout Arizona, the perfect place to do it. And I'm curious, is there anyone that's really kind of increasing their presence? You mentioned there a little bit already at the start, but is there anyone else of note down there in Arizona that Rockies fans might hear a little bit more of as we go through the fall league and closer to spring training?
Yeah, I think it always pitching is always the big one. We'll always have those position players, but pitching wise, I already mentioned Case Williams. Jaden Hill is really one to keep an eye on. He's healthy. Looks like he's not having big stints, big outings, usually coming in for like an inning or so, but he's working through things. He's been looking pretty decent there. I think he's got a 2.25 ERA in 4 games over just 4 innings, 3 runs that have been allowed, just one of them earned. So obviously minor league level production of defense, but 1 earned run in 4 innings. He's got a couple of punch outs and everything. So it's good to see him on a mound and working, because that's been the thing of, will he ever be healthy enough to really do anything? And so he's a big one. Evan can expand a little bit more on Juan Mejia. He's been one that people have been keeping an eye on. He's been having a pretty good little stint.
Yeah, Juan Mejia's had somewhat mixed results. So he has an ERA of 4.15, but he's also only pitched 4 1/3 innings. But in those 4 1/3 innings, he struck out 11 batters. Like he's getting the job done, and he's not necessarily close to major league. But seeing that we have these high caliber relievers down in our farm system is really nice to see. Honestly, I want to circle back to him too. Benny Montgomery, his performance in Arizona, I think, is going to be really important to his stock, which has honestly fallen off a little bit since he was taken so high a couple of years ago. He's dealt with injuries and hasn't necessarily performed up to the hype, as it were, but he put together a pretty solid season this year, and now he's showing what he's got down in Arizona. I think he's going to see himself rising back up again.
Very exciting. I think Benny Montgomery is a guy to be excited about. There was a lot of buzz about him when he was drafted. Someone who just has a lot of fun. He's got Chuck Nasty energy to him, where I think if he does become an everyday big leaguer, he's someone whose personality is going to shine on the Colorado Rockies as well. So great news. I mean, you're always encouraged by that. I love high strikeout numbers from some Rockies pitchers. Give me more pitchers that can strike people out. Please, especially after how many bullpen nightmares we saw this year. And just briefly here, I know that you guys probably know as much as I do at this point. You guys hearing anything about the where we might be watching the Rockies next year and who might be carrying the games? It seems to me like there'll be an MLB carried team, but maybe an opportunity. Dick Momfort's maybe looking for an opportunity there, and I'm certain that Kroenke would wants to get more involved there and more media. Have you guys know anything about what's going on with the TV situation?
No, it's just kind of like with everybody. It's kind of in the dark, and as the season was ending, had Drew Goodman, Rockies TV play-by-play, saying just stay tuned in the offseason. We'll have an announcement. So we're just sort of sitting and waiting on that. It's always they change their profile pics on like Facebook and stuff where it's just Sportsnet Rocky Mountain. So maybe they've got something. Again, going back to that mailbag from Patrick Saunders, he said like the Rockies TV deals they probably get about the same amount of money they're getting from the current deal they had. So maybe they do go through MLB and it's more available that way. I know Rennie Dick from Purple Row talking to the Arizona people that cover Arizona Diamondbacks. They said there really wasn't much change. There was just there was no pregame show or really any post game. Was the broadcasters going down and talking to somebody on the field. So it's really cut down, but it was pretty much fine. So if it goes to that, probably not ideal, but wouldn't mind them having them with altitude though. Nice local thing, kind of.
The problem with altitude then is you need to make sure that they get back on the air where the majority of Colorado sports fans can actually watch them, because I don't know about y'all, but I haven't been able to legally watch the Avs in 5 years. So
it's such a disappointment, man. That is, and that's the only thing that I think this is an interesting storyline. I mean, if three major Colorado sports become a pain to watch for the majority of Colorado, I mean, people are going to find a way to watch Jokic and the Stanley Cup Avs. The 100 loss Colorado Rockies, that one might be a little bit tougher to sell, and that worries me legit, especially because I think they don't have the same historic crew, and I go back and forth, but it's cool to see what the Rockies broadcast team has been able to do. Of course, Jenny being able to break the ceilings that she's been able to break as well. So hoping for the best for those people, because working in media is a grind, as you guys are very, very much well aware of. Guys, we're going to wrap things up there. Thank you both so much for your time. Before we go, again, what best place to go support you guys? Because if people have been tuning into Locked On Rockies, they know that we love what Purple Road does, and we love y'all's work. So where can they go and support you guys?
Yeah, you can go find us on Twitter or X or whatever it is at Rocky Mountain Rooftop. That's ROCKYMTN Rooftop, or Every Rocky Ever at Every Rocky Ever. Always checking out our tweets there. We're not super active, which we need to get better at, but we're always super active on our own personal ones. You can find me at sideline_crowd, and always writing Wednesday rock piles and just pumping out what I can for Fans First Sports Network. It's not always Rockies related, but covering more stuff there.
Same. You can find me on Twitter for however long that website's going to be around at Evan_Lang27. You can also find me on Blue Sky, which if you're on Blue Sky, I encourage you to follow me at EvanLang27 at .bsky.social. I'm doing the Thursday rock piles over on purplerow.com. Actually, right after this, I'm going to get started on writing my next piece here. And we're going to keep doing the podcast. You can get our podcast also on YouTube if you are of the video persuasion, youtube.com/@RockyMountainEver. Same as the Twitter at RCKYMTN Rooftop.
Love it, guys. Thank you again so much for everything you do, and for all of you out there checking out the pod. We thank you for making us your first listen of the day. And until next time, this has been the Locked On Rockies podcast.